Good afternoon, everyone. This is Leora Byris from the monitoring team for special services. It is 3 o'clock, so we are going to get started. We know everyone's time is very valuable. Hopefully you are all here today to do the individualized remote learning plan that Erin has talked about. And hopefully you're here to look at that with us and to get any questions that you may have answered as we go through. So with me today are Colette Sullivan, who is sort of going to be in the background today. And Anne-Marie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. Hi, I'm Anne-Marie Adamson. I'm so glad you could join us today. I work for the Department of Education.
All right, perfect. So there are some more folks there who were involved with special services who also worked on the IRLP committee, and there were many other people, stakeholders and directors who were part of that as well. And the IRLP was actually, the form that we're using is actually from, it was developed at a district and they gave us permission to use it, and it's been edited further since then. So, and it is on the director's corner of the website. So just a little bit of housekeeping. We do have chat box check-ins throughout today's session. We encourage you to ask questions about the things that we're talking about as we go. We did this morning and we found that people had a lot of great questions, but they were things that we were going to get to in like 3 slides. We will check in a lot throughout today and make sure that your questions are being answered. And hopefully they will be by the time we're done today. So we're going to talk about an individualized remote learning plan, IRLP. So some things to keep in mind as we go through today. An IRLP is meant to be a temporary plan. It's not meant to be permanently part of the IEP. It's designed for communicating an agreed upon plan. So you're going to make the IRLP with lots of parent involvement, which we will stress a lot throughout today. And the plan also has a really nice communication piece to it that I think people will find helpful. We've gotten some very nice feedback about it. It describes changes to a student's IEP that are necessary to protect health and safety. So this is meant to be for the pandemic, to get us through that time and make sure that everything is transparent with families. So an IRLP is not required by IDEA. We do recommend that you consider having an IRLP plan to navigate the uncertainties related to COVID, but it is not mandated and is not required. And if your district chooses to have an IRLP, you may choose to have it on a different form. We like the idea of having a more uniform form so that districts are consistent, but that's completely district specific. So if you edit things or have a plan written in a different way, that's perfectly fine. This is a recommendation, it is guidance, but it is not a requirement. So these are some important points. The IRLP should be developed with input during the IEP team meeting. It should not be developed in isolation. It can be discussed as an amendment to the IEP without a meeting. So you could do the written notice and make sure that you're documenting very clearly in the written notice what parent input was and why it was put together without a meeting. So you can do that, but you want to make sure that documentation piece is very, very clear. And again, we're going to stress that parent input piece because the IRLP, we're really advocating for it to be as transparent as possible. And you know, when we look at litigation and things like that, you know, the more parent input there is, you know, the better off we are in that in many, many circumstances. And it looks like the chat box is completely blank at this point, so we'll just keep on going. If you have questions about anything, feel free to put them in the chat box. So there are 2 uses to the IRLP. We looked at 2 different scenarios where they would be used. Yes, this is being recorded, absolutely. And Julie will also send out the PDF of these slides as well. So one of the situations where you would use an IRLP is that they could be implemented during disruption to in-person instruction due to the pandemic. So this would be the plan of what is happening remotely for that child who is a special education student. So that would be the first scenario where you would use an IRLP. This is guidance from OSEP from March 2020. And again, we will send a PDF of the slides out. So if you want to look at this guidance, you will have the link and be able to do that at your leisure. The second scenario where you would want to use an IRLP, or you may consider using an IRLP, I should say, is if the student is being offered in-person services, but the parents/guardians are electing to access services remotely. And we know that that is happening in some districts, that parents are scared. They don't know what's going on. They're worried about their child. We're in a very strange situation. So you may wish to have an IRLP in that situation as well. So you can document what's going to be offered remotely for the district's offer of FAPE. Oh, and thank you, Julie. Julie put the link to the PowerPoint in the recording where it will be posted. Awesome, perfect. So that's in the chat box for you. So if a parent chooses an online program and the exact type and amount of services identified in the IEP cannot be reasonably provided, and/or the IEP team believes in-person is necessary to provide FAPE, then the IEP team should develop an IRLP to describe services that will be delivered in the online program. We're going to show you very specific examples of what this document looks like and how you might choose to fill it out. The school should provide parents with prior written notice to communicate necessary changes in service delivery, the reason for change, and identify services that are available should the parent choose to return to in-person instruction. Because again, the IRLP is an amendment. You're going to document it in section 6 of the IEP. So although determination of when prior written notice is required depends on the particular facts and circumstances, OSEP encourages schools to ensure that parents are fully informed of how their child's special education and related services needs are being addressed during remote learning. And that's really what the IRLP is about. It's showing what services can the school provide to the child so they can access FAPE remotely. This is some guidance that came out on June 30th from OSEP, some questions and answers. As we know, there are no waivers to IDEA. There's nothing new in the chat box, Anne Marie, so we can go ahead. Oh, there is something new in the chat box. Hold on one second, Anne Marie. Is an IRLP needed if the same amount of services can be provided remotely as in person? I think that's really up to the IEP team. If you feel like it's necessary, then of course, please have one with the family. But if you feel like the IEP is still the best offer of FAPE and you're able to provide all of those services remotely, then that would be an IEP team decision. All right, Anne Marie, I'm going to mute and let you take over.
Okay. So here we are showing what the IRLP would look like if you added it to section 6 of the IEP. Remember, accommodations are specific to the learning environment. So here we have the plan itself as an accommodation, and it's in classroom instruction and classroom assessment. The location is remote with general education and/or special education. Frequency as needed during remote learning, and the duration of the amendment that you would write, or the IEP if it was an annual. And then also we've given an example of what might be added if you feel you need specific accommodations for the remote learning. Classroom instruction, classroom assessment would be where it would be provided. remote learning for general education and special education, and as needed during remote learning again. So here we have an example of what would Section 7 might look like in the IEP. And you don't want to break up the in-person instruction from the remote instruction. So here we have math computation, and the person responsible would be the special education teacher, and the location is special ed. And instead of doing 5 times a week or 2 times a week, we break it out into total minutes per week, so that the IEP team can really determine what that might look like if it was remote and in-person learning. So you want to clearly outline that and document it in the written notice. And here is another example using related services. So again, we're not doing times per week. We are doing 60 minutes per week or 30 minutes per week, and then the team decides how that will break out. Chat box check-in. Anything there, Leora?
No, everything is quiet right now. No new questions.
Okay, I'll keep going. Okay, so now we're going to look at what the IRLP actually looks like itself. So this document is designed to clarify instruction that is occurring remotely during the public health emergency. So here's the demographic information for the child, the case manager, service providers, so basically the team information as well, and the date it was implemented. And here, this is a really nice piece of the IRLP. As a group, we thought this was a great addition to making a plan, and that is the communication that would occur in the remote setting. So the team agrees on how that communication will be maintained, and it's documented here in the communication plan. So there's the team member, the case manager, and in a remote-only situation, the case manager would be emailing or a phone call with the parent 2 times per week. For the therapist, it would be communicating with the case manager 1 time a week for the speech pathologist. And then for OT, the general OT would give recommendations for home carryover, an initial email in the beginning of the red time frame, and then would communicate with the case manager 1 time per week. And the social worker would email, phone call with family weekly as needed, and then a video conference weekly as well. And here is how you would document the SDI that would be delivered. So the team agrees on the services that will be provided, and the goals are listed in the left-hand column, and those are the same goals from the IEP. You're just listing them here because it gives you a nice visual, or the parent a nice visual of the carryover that would occur. And then the SDI that would address each one of the goals, and then how that learning was verified. So for example, understanding of the concept of place value for numbers 11 to 19, the SDI would be binder activities, 10 minutes, 5 days per week at home. And actually, I'm thinking there could be any one of these activities and then could address that goal, and then this would be the verification of the learning on the right-hand column. Here's more on the services for related services, and here's an example of speech and language. So here again, they've listed the goals from the IEP itself, and then the activity or the teletherapy that would occur, and then how that would be assessed in a remote environment. The team agrees on how the programming will be delivered. So these are the total SDI and the goal area, and then how many minutes per week of remote SDI would occur. So you're as a team, you're talking about how this would differ from your offer of FAPE in the IEP itself. This would be what would happen if you were to go remote. And of course, you know, as the team discusses this and agrees upon it, the parent is part of that team. So this is just a slide disclaiming the fact that we didn't come up with this remote IRLP. It was created by a school district in Maine, and permission was given to us to share this. We have, it's not its first incarnation. As a group, we have looked it over and been provided with lots of feedback and made the changes accordingly. Any questions, Leora?
So we have one question in the chat box. If we add it to the IEP during a meeting, then it's not an amendment. So our guidance is to add the IRLP to section 6 as an accommodation, which would be amending the IEP. So you're developing, you know, best practice would very likely be to develop the plan at an IEP team meeting with lots of parent involvement, make sure that it's all well documented in the written notice, and put it as an accommodation in section 6 when the IEP is amended. That's our guidance, so that if the school goes remote, you can look in section 6 and know the child has an IRLP, and that's the offer of FAPE during that remote learning time. That's the only question in the chat box. Oh, can it be put in during an annual? Yeah, if you have an annual coming up soon, absolutely, for sure. Whenever the team wants to put this in into play for the child, absolutely you can put it in. Oh, awesome. So you've got 3 coming up tomorrow. Perfect. It's good timing. Originally, this was presented as a hybrid remote plan, but then changed to a remote only plan. What would be the best way to document what hybrid might look like? Anne-Marie, do you want to speak to this today? You were very succinct about this in our morning meeting.
Well, I guess the most important thing to note is that the actual IEP is the district's offer of FAPE. And as you go hybrid, you want to look at the total number of minutes and decide as a team how you want that to break up. And as a team means the parent is there. So their input would be invaluable as far as deciding what that might look like. So I think the question was this morning that there was a question around the legality of not providing the full amount of minutes from the IEP. And if you are breaking it down and providing the full amount of minutes and the parent has input, then that should be fine. Does that make sense, Leora? I feel like I wasn't as succinct.
So the question is really about, so this plan has been through several edits. And originally we did look at one that had both hybrid and remote, and we got feedback from various stakeholders and people in various departments in the state, and they were more comfortable in thinking that it was better to have either an all in person or an all remote. If the student is fully remote, can the IEP minutes of services differ from the IRLP as compared to minutes for fully in school? Yes, so it is very possible that you will not be able to offer everything in section 7 on the IEP remotely. That might look different, and that's why we're advocating for there to be an IRLP, so that the parents especially are very are well aware of what the offer of FAPE is during the remote learning time, and they're not expecting that to look the same as what it looks like on the service grid during in-person learning. That's the purpose of the IRLP. What is considered SDI for remote learning? Do you want to go back to that slide, Anne-Marie? The slide with the goals and the SDI? So this is the offer of SDI for this particular child. And just to note again, these goals are specifically from the child's IEP. There's no change in what those are. And the middle column, SDI remote only, is showing what activities are going to be done towards those goals while the school is remote. And then how the learning is verified, because obviously SDI is going to look different in the remote learning environment. Has a hybrid plan gone away? Do you want to talk to that one, Anne Marie?
I missed what you just said. I'm sorry. The question was?
So has the hybrid plan gone away?
Well, yes. As far as the IRLP, there is no hybrid section in it.
This
We
is
had
the IRLP, the way that we are giving guidance for it to be done. And it is on the blank document is on the director's corner. All right, okay, just to clarify, if we are currently, oh dear, hold on. That went up too quickly and I lost a question. Bear with me just for a moment, please. All right, if we are currently in a yellow plan, we should complete an IRLP in the event we go red. Yes, that is our guidance, that this is part of the IEP. So in the event that you go red, this is already in place, parents have already agreed on it, and they know what to expect, what the communication will be, etc. Does it matter if the remote learning is synchronous or asynchronous? No, I don't think so. As you can see on this example, there is some synchronous. I mean, Google Meets 4 times a week for 20 minutes. But then there's other like online reading app for 20 minutes that would probably be asynchronous. Binder activities could certainly be asynchronous. If the student services are not going to change, if we move to full remote learning, do we need to do an IRLP? For example, the student receives 60 minutes of speech therapy per week now and will continue to receive 60 minutes of week speech therapy. If we move to remote only, do we need to do an IRLP? Could we just put a statement in the written notice that all services will be done remotely, telehealth? Absolutely. Yeah, we are not, this form is not mandated in any way, shape, or form. This is guidance to, again, try to be as transparent as possible to make sure that parents understand what the offer of FAPE will be for their child should things go red again and be all remote. So if the district chooses not to do an IRLP, that's a district decision. That's perfectly fine. What about in-class support times for hybrid learners? What if we cannot meet the amount of time specified on their IEP because they are only in school 2 days a week? Do you want to talk to that one, Anne Marie?
I would say that comes down to an IEP decision as well. You know, you have to hold the meeting and discuss the fact, you know, what is your offer of FAPE based on how many days the child's attending?
Right. Could we still address services in a hybrid model as an IEP accommodation? I'm sorry, I was waiting for you to, I guess I didn't say it.
Oh no, I'm thinking on it. You can go if you have an answer.
No. Okay, so could we still address services in a hybrid model as an FI? That again would be a district decision. This is the document that we've come to edit to a point where we feel comfortable with it. So it is on the director's corner, and if you choose to use it, that's awesome. If you choose to have it and edit it further, that is completely up to your district. So how you choose to show families their offer of FAPE during hybrid or remote is a district decision. We just wanted to offer some guidance and some uniformity as districts were asking for that a lot.
And I think if you only had it on the IEP alone, you'd have to have a meeting every time it changed. I think that's what part of this is.
Yeah,
is to be able to have something in place.
Yeah, I think you're right, Anne Marie. Must the district special education director attend the IRLP meeting? I have one who told us to just go ahead. So the IRLP meeting should be an IEP team meeting. And if it's not an IEP team meeting, then it should be an IEP like amendment without a meeting with the written notice. So it's not a separate meeting. This is not supposed to be developed in isolation. It's really supposed to have all the parent input possible, and we know that that can be challenging sometimes. But if you can't get parent input for whatever that reason might be, you want to make sure that's very well documented in the written notice. Do we count it as a school absence if the remote learner doesn't attend? Can the IEP team decide the student has to attend in school? So I think that question has been up for debate in a lot of ways. We can take that question now. Julie is with us, and probably most of you know Julie, and she's taking all the questions down that we are not sure about the answers to. When we'll get answers, then we will get back to you to make sure that everyone is on the same page. So I have an ed tech coverage change for a student in a hybrid model right now. I was going to include this change in an IRLP, but now I should just amend the IEP. So if you have an IRLP, which is documented as an amendment, and it is an accommodation in section 6, then you can amend the IRLP without amending the entire IEP. And that was kind of the thought behind it, is that this plan could be quite dynamic depending on circumstances. So if you have it be that accommodation piece, student has an IRLP, then that can be adjusted without having the full IEP team meeting.
But I think that person was saying they are in hybrid, so that would need to be an IEP change.
There we go, and that's the key piece that I missed there. So
that's
perfect.
Okay.
Thank you, Anne Marie. Yes, you are in hybrid. Yeah, so that's a different. How do they say that?
This would be remote only.
Yeah, so the IRLP is just for remote learning. Any other questions before? We're done a little bit early, but I want to make sure. Even if our district is telling us to use that would be a district decision. If your district wants you to use the hybrid IRLP, that's a district decision. So yeah, I mean, our guidance is just really going back to that piece of parent involvement and making sure that they are at the table and they are making the decisions along with the team. That's the big takeaway from this is to get that parent involvement as much as possible. You don't have to be quiet, Joe. I just want to make sure that I got your questions answered. Thank you. If any of you need a certificate of attendance for today or a contact hour,
getting small group instruction from the teacher. And then Sean's going to come out 20 minutes.
Julie just put my contact information in the chat box. If you need a certificate of attendance or contact hour, you can email me and I will get that out to you. All right, another question. So if my school is doing a hybrid but teaching all students live through Google Meet, we do not need an ID. Okay, so the IRLP is really a district decision. Whether your district wants to use them or not is completely up to your district. We're saying that we feel like it's a good decision to do so, and it's our guidance to do so, but it is not a mandate to do that if they are not required. If the IRLP is developed with parent input during an IEP meeting or through amendment when it is altered, should there be a space on the plan to document that it was altered with parent input? So our thought was that would be documented. If it's being altered as part of an IEP meeting, then that would be documented as part of the written notice. Did you want to add anything to that, Anne Marie?
No, I think that's the most important thing, is breaking out that thought process in the written notice.
So this is Kathy Pizzo from Portland. So the IRLP is developed either during an IEP meeting or through an amendment to an IEP.
Right.
It's added under the accommodation section, so it can be somewhat fluid.
Yes.
So if it is adjusted in a fluid manner, shouldn't there be a spot to say that it was adjusted with parent input? Because you're not going back to IEP if you're adjusting it as a fluid document.
Well, again, this document is, the district can edit the document. If you want to have that added to the document, you are certainly able to do that if the district is more comfortable having that be there. There's nothing wrong with that at all. We have another question. This isn't about IRLP, but what do we do for IEPs if we're currently having shortened days that might be changed to long days in the future? Right now, we are shortened everything we teach in both regular and special education. That question is one that we got this morning as well, and we're going to bring it back to Roberta to get a clear answer to that, because we want to make sure that So we are answering you correctly. So we will find out. Can you please share or email? So Julie, can you put the link in again? Julie's going to share the link to the MDOE website where you can get the recording and the PowerPoint. Perfect, Julie, thank you.
I'm sorry, I missed it when you said how we get our certificates if we need one. I was typing a question to you at the moment.
No problem. I will put my email in. Julie did it for me earlier because she's much quicker than I am. Oh, perfect. You did it again, Julie. You're so awesome.
And it's up on the screen too, here.
Perfect. Yeah. There we go. So my name is Leora Byers, and you just reach out to me and I will send you a certificate. I probably won't get to it till tomorrow at this point though, so don't worry if you don't get it today. Any other questions? All right. Okay. Hey, you're welcome, Kathy. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate everyone being here. Awesome. Well, I guess we are done then. Perfect. All right. So we will see you guys soon.